Hi, I'm Lindsay. If you are like me, right after Thanksgiving is over, you start decorating for the holidays. And you may be thinking, there's no way I can finish a tree skirt in time. But with this fabric panel, Spruce Mountain from Northcott, we're going to show you how to finish one so quickly. Here's how. So this panel print from Northcott has everything you need for your tree skirt. It includes the front of the tree skirt printed, the instructions, and comes with these extra cute labels that you can add to your holiday gifts and quilts. The first step is to layer all of your layers together. So first, we've put our backing fabrics right side down, and then a piece of batting. We're using Warm 100 from the Warm Company, which is so thin and soft, so your tree skirt will drape really nicely under your tree. And then we've added the panel print, which is the tree skirt top. Now we're going to baste it in place. So you can quilt your tree skirt any way you'd like. We're going to give you some tips today for quilting a straight line grid across your tree skirt. So what we've done is initially mark perpendicular lines across the tree skirt to use initially for our quilting. So I've sewed along the initial line we marked on the tree skirt. And now I'm going to show you a great tool that the Bernina machine has that helps you get consistent straight lines sewn across your tree skirt. So I have added on the machine this seam guide, which just slides into the presser foot, and you can tighten it to hold it in place. And I've set it for one of the largest distances you can get, which is about 2.5 inches. So I will have 2.5-inch lines spread across the tree skirt. So what I will do is lower the presser foot and line up the seam guide with that original line, and then I'm just gonna start sewing. Another great feature I love about this Bernina machine that's so helpful for quilting is that on the foot pedal, if you rock your foot back, it pushes the needle down so that you can keep both of your hands on the quilt while you're quilting if you need to stop for any reason and reposition. One more helpful tip when you're quilting this tree skirt is the Bernina, when you lower the presser foot, lifts up a little bit so you can still readjust and align things perfectly before you can push it all the way down and then get quilting. So using our seam guide, we quilted straight lines all the way across in one direction and then went back and did across the other direction to form this grid. Now if you wanted to stop here and just make this into a cute scalloped table topper, you definitely could. But we're going to show you how to turn this into a tree skirt by cutting a circle out of the middle. Okay, so now we're going to find the center of our tree skirt, which we would have quilted right through. And we have a 6-inch circle template that I'm going to find the center of by folding it in half twice. And we have this circle template available for you to download. So then we'll just align it right with the center. And then we're just going to trace around it with an erasable marking tool. So now that we've drawn our circle, we are going to cut a slit through one of the lines we just quilted and then cut out that center circle. Now just remember, wherever you're cutting this slit will most likely be in the back of your tree. So choose the motifs you love the most to appear at the front. Okay, we're also going to cut out the tree skirt now. Now I'm going to show you how to bind the tree skirt using bias binding. So we're going to make bias binding for our tree skirt. Since the tree skirt has so many scalloped edges, using bias binding, which has a little bit more stretch, will help us get around those curves more easily. So we need about 200 inches of bias binding. So what we've done is cut a 24-inch square of fabric diagonally. Now we're going to move this piece and align these long straight edges and sew along the seam. Now we're going to mark lines across our piece of fabric every 2.5 inches. Once you've drawn lines all the way across your fabric, you'll have some excess, which you can just cut off. Next, we're going to fold our corners up and offset the corners slightly, and then align all of your lines across the fabric. You should have tails on both ends sticking out. Then we're going to pin the lines together and then sew across the seam. Once you have the seam sewn, we're going to cut off the strips on those marked lines. And what will happen is you'll just get a continuous piece of binding that's the right length to bind the tree skirt. So to prepare our binding strips, we're going to fold the strips in half and iron them in half. I'm using the reliable OVO travel iron, which fits in the palm of my hand easily so that I can maneuver it over the binding without burning my fingers. This iron is really handy to have sitting by your machine in case you just need to do a little bit of pressing as you're sewing. So we're starting to sew our binding strip on the inside straight edge we cut so we get a good start.
When you're sewing around the curves, go slow. Stop as often as you need with the needle down and reposition as needed. When you get to the inner corner, stop with your needle down and just keep sewing. No need to miter the corner. The stretchiness of the bias binding will accommodate for the extra fabric needed in those inner angles.
So after we sewed the binding to the front, I turned it over to the back and hand sewed it in place. Now sometimes with bias binding, what can happen on these curves and scallops is you'll get a little bit pucker or it'll pop up a little bit. Don't panic. All you need to do is take your iron and a lot of steam and just run it over the binding and it will lay perfectly flat. Using this fabric panel, just adding quilting and binding made this project come together so quickly. I can't wait to get home and put this tree skirt under my tree.